Good morning, guys. Welcome to a very cold and crisp Redhill aerodrome. I'm SimScott185. If you haven't seen the channel before, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button, it really helps. There's a big van going across the front of us, typical as we're trying to get this shot. And today, guys, we're going to continue a little bit of our tutorial series that we're doing. Just for clarity before we kick off, I am a real world general aviation pilot. I am not an instructor. I have been instructed, but this is definitely not for real world use. This is to get you started in a simulator and understand how things work. So again, we're sitting here with our little Katana here from Diamond Aircraft. Bit of an overcast day, but looks better over this direction where we're going to be flying to. What we're going to do today, guys, is we jump in the cockpit. It's just link together what we did before. So we were doing a number of sort of circuits. We did our first circuit. We're now going to do a landaway, which is really exciting. It's the first time while you're a pilot that you actually feel like you're going somewhere. So you spend a lot of time in the circuit, going round in circles, round in circles. What we're going to do here is actually landaway. It's going to be really simple. We're going to keep it so simple that you guys will be able to follow along. So what we're going to do is we're going to taxi out to runway 08 right at Redhill, same as in our previous videos. We're going to take off and we're going to note the same climb out as we did before, and we'll talk about that as we get to the runway, what we're looking for. So we're going to go over the road, we're going to have the farm on our left hand side, and then we're going to just get in and head straight, and it's going to be really easy for you guys to follow along. We're going to head straight. We're going to follow a railway line which will pick up as a ground feature, and we're just going to follow that railway line straight on for about 10-15 minutes, and as we go along we'll just talk about sort of keeping height and where we want to be. We're not going to sort of set you sort of challenges around you must stay at this height. We'll give you sort of a bracket that you should stay in, look at your speeds, get time to feel the plane, play around with it, and you've got a line feature so you can move to the left, you can move to the right, you can go up, you can go down, but you always know which direction you're going, and it'll mean you can look outside the cockpit a little bit more rather than be heads in looking at your altimeter or your speed or your directional indicator. This is to get you a bit feeling the aircraft and how it works. We're heading to a place called Headcorn. It was actually why I did my first landaway, and it was because at Redhill we didn't have any fuel, and I think they had a shortage in delivery, and we're sitting in the Katana, and we needed fuel for our lessons going forward. So we actually flew to Headcorn and filled up there. It's a bit like driving to your local gas station or petrol station, but we did that, picked up some fuel, and then came back. So we're going to head to Headcorn. It's quite difficult in the simulator to pick out Headcorn. It is a grass runway like Redhill, and actually, in the summer, the grass can be pretty scorched, it can be pretty brown, and it can be difficult to pick out runways and airfields. The runway heads in the same direction as we're going, so it should be pretty simple for you to guys to line up. We'll do an approach and we'll land. We'll just talk about sort of things as we go on the way, but hopefully it'll be fun, guys. It's a good way to get yourself doing something different in the simulator. The graphics in Microsoft Flight Simulator are great, and actually, if you're near the ground, you get to appreciate them a bit more. So hopefully this will be good fun for you guys, and we'll take it and see where we need to go. Okay, guys, welcome to the cockpit. Let's get the checklist going. Start our engines. Let's do the evaluation.
Parking brake. Set.
We're
Battery
set.
switch.
Let's turn on.
Fuel shutoff valve.
That's horizontal.
Open. Throttle.
Idle.
Idle. PROP speed
Max
control.
RPM.
Max RPM.
Good job. Very quick and easy, guys. Again, evaluation.
Electric fuel pump. On.
Fuel pump comes on.
Choke.
Choke. Comes
On.
out.
Fully pulled. Ignition.
Let's start the engine. We normally look around before we start, guys. Just make sure no one's walking towards the aircraft. We do have this guy in front of us who is desperate to push us back, but we're not going to let him.
Start. Throttle.
And let's
Max
start.
1500 RPM. Oil
Yep.
pressure.
Looking for
Check.
pressure being in the green. And what we'll also look for, guys, is just if we come down here, this oil pressure just to creep up. We'll let that go, and we'll check that just before we taxi. So let's get the position light on and our strobes.
On as required. Avionics master switch.
Avionics comes on.
Parking brake.
We're not going to release the parking brake just yet, guys, because we still got to just make sure everything's okay before we set off. We'll turn the transponder on. Same as what we have in our aircraft. We have a Garmin as well. You can see that oil pressure is coming up, and we'll hit out. Okay, guys, let's get ourselves over to the runway. We're going from 08 right, and let's just get a view that's more realistic. Parking brake comes off, and let's head off to 08 right. Bit overcast, as I said, at Redhill, but that's fine. normally in the real world. So we taxi stick full back. So you'll see that my stick is full back. And that stopped the propeller just from bouncing. When you taxi on grass, you're going to get sort of bounced around. There's divots, there's rivets, there might be big holes. It's not unusual. So you want to go really slowly and just keep your eyes in front of you, scanning the horizon. Going slightly up a hill as well, so we might need a bit more power. What I haven't done is set the altimeter. Really quick way to do that in Microsoft Flight Simulator is hit the B key, and you'll see we're at 200 feet now. Excuse me. So it should be a beautiful morning for flying, guys. We've got real world weather on at the moment. You might want to do this without real world weather. It just keeps everything a bit more consistent and constant. But try it with real world weather at some point. So, coming up to 08 right. Just pull the throttle back here. Okay. So guys, just a little brief on the takeoff. What we're going to do is obviously head down the runway, keep your eyes out of the cockpit, but also flicking your eyes down to the airspeed, which will come alive here. I want to rotate around sort of 50, 55 knots in the Katana. We're going to set one stage of flaps for takeoff, which you'll hear going in there. As we take off, going to nice climb out, round about sort of 60, 65 knots as we climb up. At 500 feet, we'll lose the first stage of flaps. You'll see visually, we're going to cross a road. We'll have that farm on the left like we have done before. And we'll just keep going. We're going to go straight. There is a line feature, a railway that we're going to follow. It will come out. Just keep the faith. You'll see it. And we're just going to follow that, as I said, all the way down to Headcorn. Should be a nice little flight, guys. We'll talk on the way. All right, let's get ready to take off. Okay, guys, let's get ourselves up towards the runway. Bit of power needed here because we're on a hill. So we're just getting ourselves started. Let's say we're going to line up, rotate around 55. Bit of a murky day in the UK today. Looking out my window, it's pretty similar. It's maybe a bit brighter. I think sometimes the weather in Flight Sim lags behind. So we're going to do a rolling start. So we're happy we've got flaps in one stage. We're not rushing anything here, guys. Let's go to full power. A little bit of right rudder, just to keep us on that centre line. Not too much, actually. Airspeed's alive, you'll see. It's creeping up. About to hit 50 knots. That's about 55, so I think we can go. Let's just climb out. You can see the air sock on the left-hand side, so the wind's directly into us, so that means we're going to have a slow flight today, guys, but definitely pick the right runway to take off. Beautiful. Let's just get the view sorted a little bit higher up. And let's just zoom out slightly if we can. Oh, no, it's not like this. Okay. That is fine. Right. We're into the climb now. We're pitching. And we've got the power set. We've got the attitude set. There's that road. We've gone through 500, so bring up your flaps. There's the farm on the left-hand side. Still climbing. We'll probably just level off round about. Let's go for sort of 1,400 feet. The Gatwick zone starts at 1,500 feet. You want to give yourself a little bit of leeway. We had someone commented when I was posting this on Avsim, just sort of the video, about how much leeway you have in the circuit, and sort of said 100 feet. That sort of does work, but you do have to be really mindful of people around you as well. People join Redhill overhead. You may have other people joining the circuit that you're unaware of. So it's best to stick as close as you can to the numbers that we're looking to do. Okay, have a little look outside, guys, in our little Katana, steaming forward, taking on the world. Beautiful. And to go outside, we always lose the direction slightly. Start to wonder. As you can see, we're crabbing a little bit off to the right-hand side. So let's just bring ourselves back onto. Let's go in an easterly heading. Let's stop at 1,500 feet. I said 1,400. Let's not hold us to it too much, guys. It's a simulator. So, we're going to level off. So what we're doing is we're just going to get our attitude right. Bring the power back slightly. And what I'm going to do, and you guys don't need to do this, but I'm also going to bring the RPM back. So you see we're at 20 with the throttle. And with the RPM, just bring that back to 25. I think that is. Let's have a little look. Yeah, 20 actually. 20 and 25 is the numbers you're probably looking for. Sorry, I got that wrong way. 20 on the RPM, 25 on the manifold pressure, which is controlled by your throttle. Again, we're slightly going up again in terms of height. Bit naughty, but it's quite difficult in the simulator when you're sort of trying to trim the aircraft, pull your RPM lever. It's not easy. And I say it's simulated, guys. In real life, I would be watching this like a hawk. I don't want to get reported to Gatwick for infringing airspace. So you'll see our railway line features come into play here, stretching out into the distance. This little town here is a reporting point known as the station, and it's Godstone Station. So what we do is, as we're coming out of Redhill, we would report that we're overhead Godstone Station, and that would let the controllers know where we are in relation to other aircraft, and they know that we're sort of clear of the circuit. Feels a little bit bumpy with the wind up here, guys, but we'll trim slightly. You can see we're getting some massive knots here, 120. Feels a little bit unrealistic, but we'll go with it. So we're just going to follow this line feature, guys, literally all the way to Headcorn. So use this as an opportunity to sort of practice sort of keeping your height if you want to. You can have a little look outside. We're in the simulator as well. Want to make sure that we actually see what's going on. We're descending in a bit now. Katana is quite jittery if you don't get it trimmed just right. And you can always look at, so you see we're still descending, which is interesting because I thought I had it trimmed correctly. So let's just pull back a little bit. It is so jittery as an aircraft, but a good one to practice on. And I'm as you can see, I'm sort of struggling a little bit just to keep it in check with my trim. Could be the wind as well. These things get bounced around a lot in the wind because of their wingspan. They're pretty light. You will tend to find that you get bounced around, but it's cool. It's a great way to practice, as I say. So we're just heading along here at the moment. Aircraft. I'm not touching the controls. It just wants to dive off to the left. Got to keep your wits about you. You'll see in the distance, guys, this body of water. This is Bow Beach, which we talked about in our briefing. So we're just going to follow that. Again, if you're coming or going into Redhill, this is great. So you imagine you're coming from Bow Beach into Redhill. Just follow the railway line. You pretty much get there. And I went up with someone years ago when I sort of did a kind of not a training flight, but one of these introductory flights, and how I got into flying. And he said one day the weather was really bad at Redhill, but he just basically, they call it scud running. And you keep low, you keep tracking this line feature, and eventually you get there. And he was very happy when he got to Redhill. So we got our speed a bit more in check. We're more trimmed. I'm not touching anything on the controls, guys. You'll see down here, it's deadly straight. So I've got the aircraft trimmed after a while because of the wind. And so yeah, we're just going to put along here, guys. Hopefully this is useful. We're just cruising along. The wind's blowing us slightly off course, so we might want to choose, again, we might crab into the wind. Again, guys, if you're flying this, you might want to turn live weather off, just because it's probably a little bit sporting at times in this Katana. You can see from above, we are heading this way, but to get that way, we sort of have to head this way, if that makes sense, because of the wind. So although the plane is pointing in this direction, think of it like a river. The wind's carrying you, and actually I think the wind's coming towards us, but it's probably blowing us in the direction that we don't want to go. So it's quite interesting. We're sort of crabbing into that wind to go in a straight line. Let's get back in the cockpit, just get ourselves lined up. So I can give you sort of a bit of a guided tour here, guys. I have a map that I use. I don't know if you guys use Navigraph. But you can set it to world map, which is, you don't get any of sort of those things that you use in VATSIM, the reporting points, the airways, jetways. It just gives you a map. So we're heading over Eden Bridge at the moment, which will be just below us, which is there. And how we navigate in the real world, guys. So as I said, we might have a heading, and we might have plogged this, and a plog is just putting in directions, times that we want to fly to get to a certain airport, or if we're just doing a scenic tour, we might put certain points on it. And if I was going to Headcorn, it would give me a heading, and it would be wind corrected, obviously. So you can see at the moment we're on a heading of about 120, but we're probably actually tracking probably to the east. If you look down here, we're heading in this direction, but we're actually being blown this way. So again, like a river, we're just like a boat being carried along is how I always think of it. But we normally plog this. But in this case, I know that if I just, and look, I use this in real life, guys. I remember my instructor when I'd go flying, certainly on my first, not my solos, but doing circuit training, what he would tell me, because it can happen, you have to be prepared. So if you're going into a circuit, the runway may close at some point because someone either has a bit of an incident, there might be something that falls off an airplane in front of you, and I've had that happen before, where a fuel cap has come off on the runway and they have to go down the runway, find it, obviously. And if you're sort of low on fuel at that point, you need to go somewhere else. It's the reaction. It's like, it's not like in a car, you can stop. You you need to keep going in an airplane, and you need to think about how much fuel you have. So in this case, my instructor would always say, well, look, if something happens at the aerodrome, what are you going to do? My instinctive reaction, rightly, was always to say, I'm going to follow the railway line, and I'm just going to keep going down this railway line until I hit Headcorn, and then I'll land there. And as we say, it's only sort of 10, 15 minutes away, but that was always my get out. And still now, if I was flying and I was nervous that something was happening at Redhill, I know I can get here pretty easily just by following a land feature, which is brilliant. Good on British Rail, they've helped us. So we look out our left window. That's Bow Beach, we're just crossing there. If we're in the real world, this is probably where we'd stop talking to Redhill Tower. We would say to them, look, we're going to either call en route another frequency. At this height in the UK, in this airspace that we're in at the moment, we don't need to talk to anyone. We can kind of do what we want as long as we stay out of controlled airspace. What we might do is listen into other frequencies just to check if there's other aircraft around. What we wouldn't want to do is sort of be reckless. But it's great. It's such a, I guess it's a, I call it a hobby. It is a bit of a hobby. It's great. It's kind of just a little bit freeing that you can fly around here, and I can go. We'll keep the line feature in sight, but I might want to go this way and go and have a look at this town over here. Might want to at some point take a bit of a right turn, but I can always come back to this line feature. Now, you don't want to get too far away with it. There are more than one railway track in the whole of the UK in southern England, but yeah, it's great. So we're climbing a little bit, which is fine, guys. From a safety perspective, we're in the real world. We probably would climb a little bit. If you had an engine failure, you want to give yourself a bit more time so you can find a field to glide into. And I think what people probably don't realise, especially if you live in London and you wonder sort of, or even towns and things, and maybe you don't get out to the countryside as much. If we look outside, look how green it is. And actually, if my engine failed at the moment, I've got options about fields that I want to go into. And always when we're flying along, that's what we're looking for. We're sort of, it's a bit pessimistic as pilots, but we need to be. And again, it goes back to that sort of, that nature of, we don't want to be caught short. We don't want to be stuck with an engine failure and have nowhere to go. So you're always thinking about that. And at the moment, if I was thinking about an engine failure, what's in the back of my mind is which direction was the wind when I took off, because I want to land into wind, and the wind's basically coming towards us at the moment. So I probably would land ahead. You might, if that's not an option, you always have to sort of rationalize this. If the wind's coming ahead of you but there's not a field in front of you, then don't just keep ploughing on, because you've only got so long to land the aeroplane. So you might take a right turn, you might take a left turn, but there might be something behind you as well. So in this case, we might stick it down in this brown field here, but we've gone over the top of it already, but you'd maybe have it in the back of your mind. Some big fields down here. Do need to be wary of things like power lines. You also don't want to cause any damage to people. So if it was a golf course, probably wouldn't choose that. What we wouldn't do, which is different I think from America, is we wouldn't stick it down on this road here. That would be a no-no. I think if it was really quiet, you might give it an option if you're really desperate, but I wouldn't do that. I'd stick it in a field. You can see that the Katanas, and then I fly a Piper Warrior, but the Katana's what I learned in. They're pretty nimble little aircraft. I know one that probably about a year ago had an engine failure and it was put down in a field, and my instructor was in it at the time. The aircraft, I think the only thing that was damaged in the aircraft was, if I look outside, was he managed to knock off one of these little lights here, and that was about it. God, guys, having a great time flying. Not sure why they've got the full lapels on and everything like that, but look at the views and flight simulator, guys. This is awesome. So yeah, he did well in that situation. I need to buy him a beer and get him to talk, get me to tell me a little bit more of that. So what's our next major town, guys? If you know Tunbridge, this is Tunbridge. And again, how do we identify it in the real world? Well, lots of big warehouses here. What we also look at is the shape of towns, and It's a bit strange, but the higher up you are, towns look quite different. So you can see this one's got a bit of a sort of a fat bit at the top, and then thins in the middle, and then grows out again. And that's how you identify it. So if you've got it on a map, that's what it looks like. That's what our VFR maps look like. That's how we'd identify towns and make sure you're over it. There might be line features, we've got railway stations, we've got cathedrals, all these things that you kind of take for granted when you're just sitting on the ground in your cars. Those are the things that we use to navigate. Off to our right is Tunbridge Wells, which is down here. So again, that's how I'd sense check this. I'd say, well, this all makes sense on my map. I've got the right buildings, I've got the right shape. What's nearby? And actually, if I look off to the right hand side, there's Tunbridge Wells. So I know that this would be Tunbridge because it's to the north of it. You can also use roads and see how they come into the town, and does that match what you're expecting? Wind's just pushing us off a little bit again. But yeah, it's great fun, this, guys. Absolutely learning some really sort of invaluable skills of how we do things in the real world and how we get around. Now the reality is, guys, as well, I'm going to give away a bit of secret here, is that when we fly, we do use our charts, but a lot of us use something called Sky Demon, which is like an electronic moving map, and it's on an iPad. It is brilliant. It lets us know where we are at the right times. It can show other aircraft on it if they've got the right sort of equipment. And it's a bit of a lifesaver in terms of tracking where you are. But when you do your PPL and you're doing sort of your nav exercises, you don't have that in the cockpit with you. You've got your chart, you've got a stopwatch, and that's pretty much it. And so you're going along, you're wind correcting your headings. Another great line feature here, if there was some solar panels, I almost forgot the name of those things, solar panels on the ground, again, great, like that's something that you can use to just sense check where you are. And again, if we're doing this properly, which you'll find in many of my videos, they're kind of to get you guys up in the air. They're not going to be proper sort of, let's get the stopwatch out, let's go timing. We might do that going forward if you guys want a bit more sort of how it works in the real world. But if we were doing this with a stopwatch, we might say, well, we expect to be at this point 3 minutes into this leg of the journey, and let's say we were 2 minutes in, it might mean that we just have to recalculate things, because it could mean that the headwind that we expected was slightly more, and therefore we haven't made as much distance in the time that we expected. So yeah, we're probably almost about halfway there. We're coming up to a place called Paddock Wood, which we'll keep following. It's amazing how straight this train line is. I mean, I think if you're in America, you'd get train lines like this across the country. In the UK, it's pretty rare, but it's, I mean, engineering-wise, what a treat, guys, for us to use as a line feature. Again, don't be afraid to have a little look around, see the towns below you. This is what Microsoft Flight Simulator is brilliant for. The actual sort of IFR flying and VATSIM, etc. It's good, and there's a lot of people out there who do it online, and I've done a few flights in it. Always a bit nervous when using things like the Airbus, if it's going to actually track where I want it to go. But in this, you're in control, guys. You can sort of go wherever you want in these little aircrafts. Don't have to stay in the south of England. You can go somewhere else. It's beautiful. So yeah. Okay, so we're coming up to Paddock Wood. You can see my height. I'm sort of keeping around 1,600 feet, but I'm not doing anything else at the moment. If we're in the real aircraft in the real world, we do something called a Frida check. So what we do is F is for fuel. So we just kind of sense check, do we enough fuel for where we're going. And also what I might do at this point, and I would have done it earlier, is just switch the fuel pump off. Need it for takeoff and landing, but not for in the cruise. If the engine was starting, if I noticed sort of fuel pressure was going to get low, I might turn that back on again. In the Piper Warrior, when we're changing fuel tanks, because it's an old aircraft, so we do that manually, we have fuel on the left and the right. Turn the fuel pump on, we change the fuel nozzle, which is very similar to what we have here, this little sort of switch down here, it rotates. Oh, see, when I talk, guys, we go off track. This happens in the real world as well. I tend to drift. So normally, yeah, we do F for fuel. R is for radios. Are they set? And that's 2 sets. So am I on the right frequency who I want to be talking to? And have I got the next frequency in? Now, we're not doing that at the moment. We're not on VATSIM. But in the real world, I'd have my next frequency in there just so I'm prepared. Also, if I'm tracking any VORs, which we might do at some point, might use that and make sure those frequencies are in there. Engine is for E. So we're in the green in terms of our temps and pressures. What we'd also do in the real world is, this is hot air, so carb heat. And what it does, you see my speed slightly reduces when I stick in carb heat. It's putting hot air into the engine, and what we're looking for is something called carburetor icing, which can happen not just on cold days, but it could be really humid days. There's moisture in the engine. I've got to go through how a carburetor works. Something called a venturi, which sucks air in. It can cool it down, and so moisture in that air can freeze. By dumping hot air in, it clears it. And what we'd expect is, if there was ice in the engine, it would start to melt, and then water would obviously go through the engine. It'd run a little bit roughly, and then what we'd expect is for this the speed to go up again. Because once the ice comes out of the engine, it's got the proper airflow going into it. It's not sort of got a restricted airflow because of ice. We do it for about 10 seconds, close it, and you'll see like there's a little bit of an increase there. In the real engine, what is the real engine and the real aircraft? What we would hear is a different tone in the engine. So when you dump the hot air in, there's a change in tone because the engine doesn't run quite as smoothly. And then when you close the hot air and you get the engine back to the way it would normally be working, you can hear the RPM sort of take off a little bit again. So just using all those cues to make sure everything is correct. So where are we, guys? This is Marden. Lovely part of the world, never been there, but flown over the top of it. We're then going to go over a town called Staplehurst, and then we get to Headcorn. Now, as I said, guys, if you look outside at the moment, all these fields, there's some brown, there's some green, there's some sort of light brown, dark brown. So to pick out an airfield that might also be the same colour of grass, it might not have proper markings on it, it's pretty tricky. Headcorn has its other sort of nuances to it. It's a great airfield. If we're going in practicing sort of touch and go, it's got a big nice runway, it's quite long. It does do parachuting, so you do need to be aware of that, of where they drop the parachutes. That affects where the circuit is, and you don't want to basically fly through where the parachutes are. Obviously not very good for their health and not good for the aeroplane. But we don't have to worry about that. We're in a simulator. That's something I worry about when I go there in sort of real life. This at the moment, again, great guys, just a little practice, just keeping our eye in, keeping those skills right. If you've got the airplane's trimmed at the moment, and you won't see this, but I speak a lot with my hands flapping around. I like to be quite gesticulating. I've not touched it, and you might have seen it in this little thing here. I'm not really touching it. It's sort of just flying along, and that's because I'm trimmed correctly. So once you're trimmed correctly, the airplane will fly, not always in a straight line because of the wind, but up and down in terms of our vertical profile. Shouldn't go off that. Sometimes you have to do little corrections. Don't be too heavy on the controls. In the real world, you'll sometimes fly this with just 2 fingers touching it and just keeping really gentle. If you start shoving things around like that, you're going to get way out of trim. It's not good. You're obviously going to wear the aircraft out a little bit more. I got told off once by the head instructor when I was doing a practice flight with him. And before we take off, we make sure the controls can move fully left, right, up and down. And also do the rudders, and I was doing it quite violently, and you can hear it, like it's mechanical, so you can hear it clunky away, and he just looked at me like I was about to write the airplane off, and yeah, learned my lesson very quickly, guys. So let's brief the approach. I think I might be able to see the runway. I'm thinking in Flight Simulator world, this is the runway. It's quite blurry, there's buildings off the right hand side, but I think that's our runway, and the reason I know that is that this is Headcorn, this blurry town that's going to come into our view at some point. And yeah, that's the runway straight ahead of us, guys. So we can start to line up on it, which is great. We've sort of spotted it a long way out. The runway height is 72 feet above ground level. That basically, if we were going to come in sort of above that at circuit height, would be 1,000 feet. And so we'll sort of, what we'll do is we'll just start to slow up a little bit. As we come in, we're going to put the RPM to full in case we have to go do a go around. So you can hear a bit of a change in the engine. Gets a bit noisier. But what we're going to do is just reduce our power back to idle, actually, like we did in the circuit. So remember we did this in the circuit. Just maintaining sort of height. And we'll get into that white arc, which is at the 80 knots position. And I'll put 1 stage of flap in. And then we're going to descend with a descent of between sort of, in the simulator it's usually between 70 and 80, which is actually a little bit unrealistic. It's usually about 65, so let's keep the nose up. we are a little bit off to the right of the runway, so we're just going to turn to the right and just get ourselves in a good position. Got a little bit of power into the engine at the moment. Just get my head up a little bit. Gliding down at 60 knots, guys, here. Now, when you do this in your version, I suggest turning real world weather off, because I've got quite a strong crosswind that I'm battling here at the moment. You see I'm sort of pointing to the right, and we had this while we were coming along. So that's about, like, we're probably about 1,000 feet above the runway at the moment. I'm aiming for, if you guys are unsure, this dirt track down here, and that's what it looks like in the summer. Really easy. So if you guys are doing this, you'll see the town of Headcorn. There's this river that winds across it here. There's a few trees, and then we're heading off this way. I'm just going to bump a little power in, because we're just going to create quite a slow, steady approach into the runway. I'm going to point my nose a little bit to the right, just to crab us in. We won't do crosswind landings and sort of how we do that at the moment. But you'll see, look, our line feature just goes off to the distance. There's the railway. So again, as I said, this is really useful to track as a way to get closer to, or just a way to guide yourself into the runway. Okay, it's looking a bit clearer now. I can see that runway off the nose. We're looking good on profile. A little bit bumpy with the wind. And normally, like, we'd be talking to Headcorn, radio at the moment. I think they're a radio. I don't think they're a tower. So there'll be aircraft in the circuit. They'll be telling us where they are. We'd be calling final. Oh, bit of wind there. They'll be giving us wind checks, so they'll be telling us where the wind is. We'll be able to know then, do I need to sort of put my rudder in? So I've just twisted the rudder a little bit there, just to kind of keep us crabbing in. I wonder if we can show that. Not really. When you go into a crab as well, guys, so that's why I've got the rudder off to the left-hand side, it would tend to put more of the airplane into the wind that you're coming into, so it makes it less efficient, so you descend a lot quicker, so you need to compensate with that in terms of your height and your power. I'm going to put in full flaps now. Looking good. We're on profile, guys. We're sort of at 400 feet. A little bit off to the right hand side, and this is me just really struggling with this crosswind. It's pretty strong, so we'll just get ourselves back on profile. Getting blown around. So I'm going to just twist, keep my rudder into that wind on the right hand side. So you see it coming in quite nicely. Ooh. See, I'm a little bit, my nose is pointing off to the right, but we're coming in. And I might not be able to talk through this one, guys. It's taking quite a lot of effort. And as we get over the runway, if I am in this crab, I'm going to straighten up. We're probably a little bit off to the, I think the center line might be a little bit off to our right. It's really hard to see in Flight Simulator. But you see, we're just coming in. Got loads of runway to use here, guys. So I'm just going to pull the throttle back. I'm going to pull the stick back, aim down the runway. And that's it. A little bit of a kind of, not as much of a float as I would expected, but we made it, guys. Welcome to Headcorn. It's got lots of flowers on the ground. It's probably not what I'd expect. So look, probably should have kept the throttle in a little bit longer there, in terms of just gliding down the runway a bit more. I think the wind probably slowed us down a little bit, came in a bit too hard. But look, we're down, we're safe. Everyone's still alive. Let's just check on the pilots, make sure they are, these guys are cool as cucumbers. Look at them. They don't care. They've done it before. Alright guys, look, hopefully that's been super useful. You can always do the return trip. Maybe we'll do that in a separate video. But as I said, look, let's just debrief this. What were we talking about? Took off. We followed the line feature and literally just followed it all the way down here. We had a little look around. Obviously saw some towns as we came. Use the video timeline if you want to see how long it takes us to get here. But you'll note that I've talked about some towns on the way. You'll see it. You can use a map if you've got one just to check those. We came in straight. I had a bit of a crosswind. You won't have that if you use normal weather, not live weather. Just set it as a clear sunny day. Hopefully really useful, guys. Look, I've been SimScott185. Say, really enjoy doing these videos for you guys. Hit the subscribe button, give it a like on the channel, really helps. If you've got requests for videos, put them in the comments. Super happy to try some things. And yeah, look forward to seeing you guys again. Cheers.